Hey class, this is your Professor Brandon, and I'm here with actually a recent Central graduate, Aaron Dowell. Some of you may know him. If not, you should get to know him. He is currently at the midway point of a college, not a college, a post-college residency program. It is the Christ Church of the Valley in where they live. They're in Phoenix.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I was going to say Tucson,
Phoenix Valley.
yeah, Phoenix Valley. Okay, but it's also in conjunction with Johnson University, correct?
Yeah.
So you are pursuing your master's degree as well as learning on the job as a resident at CCV, which is one of the largest churches in America at this point.
Yes.
They're an enormous congregation, but they're doing it being very outgoing, very disciple focused. I wondered if you could take some time and share a little bit about your experience there. But first, why would a student who's graduating from Central, getting a ministry degree, want this type of experience? We've talked about it a little bit. I think you provide a unique perspective that our students should hear. So why don't you give us a little bit of that?
Yeah, the residency. So a lot of people think of it as an internship, but it's more than an internship. It's really a residency. Not that you're living there all the time, but you're living in immersion in that experience in ministry. And if you ask CCV, if you ask the Leadership Institute why they started it, why they do it, they're going to talk about the statistics on 3 to 5 years. If you go into ministry, 3 to 5 years, and you're going to be out of ministry, not just out of that ministry, but out of ministry in general and total. And they see that as a major problem. I think most of us would see that as a problem. And so they're going to say, hey, we want to give you an opportunity to have an experience, to see what ministry is like, to see what this feels like, to work with real consequences, but have not as a high of pressure to perform, and that gives you that opportunity to go into and learn, to be in a position of learning, and a posture of learning, and be able to ask a lot of questions, as opposed to solely a posture of execution. That's saying we need this done, and it has to be done well. And if you can't do this, we're going to move in a different direction to find somebody who can. And so it gives you that safety net of an opportunity to fail, but for that not to be fatal, for it to be a fail forward, and to learn from your experience, and learn from the people there that have been doing it for a while, and to ask a lot of questions.
That's actually one of the things that you shared with me earlier that's actually pretty exciting to me. Coming from a medical background, and you watch the way surgeons are trained, when you're operating on somebody, that's somebody's life. And that's their body. And if you mess up, that's a huge deal. So the whole point of having a residency is to be mentored along, trained to do these things that could be really dangerous, yet have somebody else who's actually the one who's in charge, who's allowing you kind of under their wing to do the ministry and to grow and try new things, but they're the one who's saying, okay, yeah, let's try that, or let's discuss that before we go out and try that, and make sure that you have that. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I think it's really the best parallel I can think of is interns. A lot of times in church world we think internship, but when you do medical world, it's residency.
Right.
And I think that's very similar. This isn't an internship. This is doing the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
You're going out and doing life here. And leadership, where I grew up, we call that vicarious liability. Whoever's in charge, they carry the liability,
right?
And they're the ones who get in trouble. And so I'm carrying the responsibility of performing these actions, but my coach and my leaders are carrying the responsibility and the liability for me, which puts a lot of pressure on them to make sure that I'm prepared, but it also puts pressure on me to perform, but also understanding like this isn't going to be fatal for me. This isn't, I can maybe not have the best conversation or make the best first time guest follow up call, but I get immediate feedback.
Right.
I know I had some filler words. I like to say awesome. And so I was talking to somebody on the phone. I said awesome 4 or 5 times, and I hung up the phone. And my coach just looked at me and goes, "Was that an awesome phone call or what?" It's like, and I'm like, "How many times did I say it?" And he's like, "I marked down."
Yeah.
And it's like, I have to be intentional about not saying that, and just little things that can make a big difference over a long period of time, and you learn those and you experience those. And
you mentioned earlier that you really felt the permission to fail forward.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's a really big deal. This idea of I can mess up here and it doesn't cost me my job.
Yeah.
And honestly, in a lot of church environments, I mean, I've served in that church where you rub somebody the wrong way, and this could be the end of the run.
Yeah, it's there was given that expectation by one of my coaches that said, "Hey, you are going to fail at something here, and if you do not fail, we're either not pushing you far enough, or not stretching you enough, or there's something going on, and we need to figure out what's going on, because this should be pushing you beyond what you're at now. If you're only doing what you're capable of doing, you're not growing, and so."
It sounds like, have you heard of Google X? Google has this really secret department where they put their smartest people, and their whole job is to develop new ideas and then develop the computer programs and stuff to make those ideas happen. But the first thing they try to do, and I heard this in a TED Talk, and I'm just like, this is the coolest thing ever. The first thing they try to do, as counterintuitive as it sounds, is they try to find how to fail. So it's like, okay, well, this is the idea. Let's figure out how to not do that. Let's screw that up. Okay. And then we can say, okay, we tried that, and they're not like going the opposite direction. They're trying to move towards that thing, whatever the goal is, but then they create some new pattern with an intention to fail, so that they're like, okay, what did we learn from these new steps we took? Okay, well, this didn't work, so we know don't do those, and immediately put all our effort in a different direction. Mm-hmm. And so they're actually finding value in analyzing their failures more than the successes. Yeah. Because that having the opportunity to fail. And in ministry, we typically don't think that. We want the home run. We want to lead somebody to Jesus every moment. And truthfully, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. That's not realistic in ministry. Most of the time, you're not going to be the end result. You're a link in the chain or a step of the process. Yeah.
Another thing that you mentioned, a reason to go into a residency program like this one, is the opportunity to ask questions of leadership. Yeah. Why don't you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a lot of times, almost every church you go to, and I'd be surprised if they don't have it as a value, as teamwork and trust. And so when you're in a position of working at the church, of being an employee of the church, and I'm working here, they're going to give you the mission. This is our objective. We're going to go reach this. This is what we need to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and we want you to go. And if you start asking a lot of questions, and you start pushing back a little bit, trying to poke the holes in it, not because you don't think you want to make it better. A lot of times they see that as not being on board, not being sold in 100% or sold out for this. But when you're in a residency, there's an expectation that you're going to ask a lot of questions. We're expected to come up with questions about why we're doing things. Why are we doing this, and why does this matter? How does this help us get to the goal? And so that gives you that permission and that opportunity to ask a lot of questions in a non-threatening way, and to get to answer some high-level strategy and some questions about why we're doing what we're doing, without being seen as somebody who's insubordinate or is not bought into the process. Like a lot of times you'll say, "Hey, I don't understand why are we doing this particular action? How does that fit in the mission, and how does that align with our goals?" And it might be something that you're just not seeing, or it could be something that needs to be asked. But a lot of other people won't ask it because they don't want to ruffle the wrong feathers.
Yeah.
Or especially in a smaller church, if you ask the wrong question to the wrong person, all of a sudden you are no longer the golden child that's going to help that church turn around. You are now the reason that the church has had all these problems they've had before you got there.
That's a really big deal, because leadership, even in the church, so much of the way we view leadership is I'm on top, I'm in charge, I'm the person who's supposed to be making the decisions. Why are you questioning me? And that is exactly the wrong attitude. We should be looking like Jesus, and Jesus welcomed questions, even from adversaries, even from people who were trying to trip him up. He welcomed questions. He would often turn their questions around and invite them into new questions, which, the use of dialogue in his ministry was huge. And so leadership development and an understanding of how can we do a better job in serving others is just being open to discussions is vital. And so that's really cool that you see that as one of the perks of being part of Residency, because you're learning how to do that well, not just being invited into it, but they're modeling it.
Yeah, it's amazing. They I've yet to see somebody lead from a position. They lead from an area of influence. And one of the quotes that stuck out is one of the guys told me, says it, your leadership is a lot like soap. Your position's like soap, because the more you use it, the less of it you're going to have. If you have to tell people you're the boss and this is the way it's going to be, that wears thin pretty quick.
Absolutely.
And so when you as a leader, when you have that influence and you can start explaining, like, this is why we're doing what we're doing, and this is how it's going to fulfill our mission and help us fuel growth and fuel whatever our goals are, people buy into that.
Okay.
And having the opportunity to ask about that without being seen as a threat, a non-threatening way to ask questions. It's been really interesting, because I can ask my coach a question and he'll say, that's a really good question, we should ask that in our next meeting. And so, because basically he's saying, you should ask this because you can get away with asking this question that I can't ask right now.
Right.
And so it's been really interesting to see that dynamic.
So let's kind of turn the corner a little bit, because I don't know who all might be watching this, but some of them are probably thinking, okay, this is a great thing if I want to be a preacher, or this is a great thing if I want to be a discipleship minister, or I want to work at a big church or whatever. Yet in hearing you describe this, I asked you the question, okay, what should a student do to prepare if they're going to do this? And one of the things you said is they should know what they want to do in ministry or have some idea. Why don't you unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, Stephen Covey calls it starting with the end in mind.
Absolutely.
So if you have an idea, and I understand, I had no idea what this looked like when I was, what do I want to do? I don't know. I don't know if this is the church I'm going to work at or this specific place, but having an idea of like what I would like to accomplish in ministry. And when, like I say, when I first started, I thought a small mindset of like, I have to be in a small church in a small town, and I'm the one guy there that does the preaching, that does the outreach, that does everything. And ministry might not look like that. It could very well look like working in a hospital and pouring into everybody around you, because it's an area that doesn't have a lot of Christians in it.
That's where the best Christians.
That's where they come from. So, but there's so many things. My roommate, his end goal is to plant churches in Utah and in Mormon country, and so this January he's moving to Idaho to work with a church.
And that's part of the program.
That is part of the program. Yeah, he's still doing. He Skypes in for all the classroom sessions on Mondays, and the rest of the week he is working in Idaho with a church that specializes in reaching Mormon culture.
Wow.
And so another guy is creating a nonprofit organization that helps people that have been sex trafficked to transition out of the sex trafficking world into a normal life. And he's creating this ranch. And so the first semester he worked with a lot of with organizations and structures and first impressions. This semester, in January, he transitions over to working behind the scenes with the development team, with our multi-site teams, with the nonprofit side, outreach side of the church, and he's going to work behind the scenes with those guys, and with developing websites and social media, and how do you advertise, how do you create all this and develop it, and so he's going to spend the next 4 or 5 months learning how to develop a nonprofit agency with a Christian mindset. And of course you have the traditional guys who are saying, I want to learn how to do ministry and go work at a church, a smaller church. I want to work at a bigger church, and it might not be the senior pastor role. It might be that I'm okay with doing an associate pastor role and working with discipleship. It might be that I'm okay working with counseling and helping people here. That maybe I don't have to be the man to have an impact.
Well, what's funny is, because I know Ashley, and he's a fantastic, I mean, even before I knew that he was going to be the new lead pastor at CCV, I mean, getting to work with him in North America and seeing the vision that he brought to the table, and it just builds off of what was already there, such a dynamic way. But one of the things that you would hear him talk about is that while he now is the voice and the kind of the personality of the preaching team, he's not CCV.
Yeah.
That there are many leaders and a lot of different gifts that come to the table, and they've done a really good job of emphasizing the whole of the team in working together and promoting the leadership gifts and abilities of the enormous teams that they use.
Yeah.
So that for an organization that's willing to invite people in to learn and do residencies, that provides a great opportunity to learn, and from great people to learn from.
When you look at he worked at Intel for years, and so he come with Bible college degree, worked in the secular world, and then now is back working in the church world, and brought all of that with him. And it's humbling to sit down and have a conversation with them sometimes. And some of the other guys on the leadership team that you'll never know their name, but are taking time out that are saying, hey, I could be doing other things, but I'm going to take the time to pour into you because I think it's a great investment.
That's cool.
It's been awesome to have that.
I mean, Christ Church of the Valley, I mean, how big are they now? I mean, last time I remember seeing them on a list, there were like 30,000 people a weekend.
I think they're 34,000 a weekend.
Okay, so you have the lead pastor of a church of 34,000, and you've had FaceTime with him, being able to talk. That alone, just that experience, is pretty awesome opportunity.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And the thing about it is, you might not, if he didn't have, he has security with him because it's such a huge campus. And, but you'll see him walking, the security guy walking behind him, he's picking up trash.
Wow.
And for him, and he takes out time. He's come and talked to us, our class, 3 or 4 times. And stops and talks to us and humble. Somebody. It's funny. I was in a neighborhood group, and somebody said, when he preached a month ago, he wore a belt that was shiny, and I couldn't help but stare at the belt the whole time he was preaching. I said, and I jokingly said, I'm going to tell him. And they're like, no, don't tell him. No, I'm going to tell him. He needs to know this. And so it was about 2 weeks later. He comes to the campus that I'm at, and I said, hey, Ashley, I need to talk to you. I got something somebody pointed out. And I said, you have a belt. And he stopped me. He goes, I wear a shiny belt. And he knew right where I was going. He goes, I don't preach. He goes, I got rid of it. He goes, somebody else said it. And he goes, and I don't want anything to be distracting, so I got rid of the belt.
That's cool.
He goes, and then he said, I also like preaching with a watch, but I realized it was shiny also, and so he quit preaching with a watch. So for him to say, I want that feedback, and he was like, hey, thank you for telling me, thank you for saying this to me. And this is a guy who could easily cash it in and mail it in and say, no, I'm preaching a pre-preach, I got this. But he's like, no, he goes, hey, thank you for telling me that, and I appreciate that, and keep telling me things like that.
Cool.
It's amazing to see that they're not okay with just saying we're good at this level.
So at this point, students who are watching this, if they're still hanging with us, because this is going on a little longer than I planned, but that's okay. This is good stuff. They might be starting to think about, I might consider doing that. At what point should a student apply for one of these residencies? Is this something they do at the end of their sophomore year, into their junior year, in their senior year? When would you suggest that they begin reaching out?
So I started mine early in my senior year.
Okay.
There's some people who do it sooner. You could do it your junior year and be accepted the year ahead.
Okay.
And so I started mine my senior year, and I started the process probably in 1st of October, and into September, 1st of October. And I called them and I just started asking some questions. And here's what I found out, for CCV anyway, is that they accept about 30 people, no matter, they get hundreds and hundreds of applications. They accept about 30-ish people. And once they reach their limit of people, they're done.
So if you want to go to CCV,
go early.
Go early. Okay.
And so as soon as I found that out, I said, when's the next time I can come? And they said, well, it's like in 2 weeks. And I said, I'll be there.
Right,
Yeah.
right now, I know of at least 5 residency programs that Johnson is involved with. I know of a couple that Hope is involved with, and there are others. This is kind of the new in vogue thing. Let's develop our residency program, and so there are opportunities out there. But I think that's important. If you even think this is something you're going to consider, you probably should start the ball rolling. Who to talk to, and such, and we can have that conversation. I'm really appreciate you just dropped by, and I really appreciate you stopping in and saying hello and being able to share something with all these students that you don't even know.
Yeah, but hey, I know a few of them maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
For another year or two.
And it's possible that they may get to know you in the future in a different context.
It could happen. It could be possible.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, and
No
thank you
guys.
for watching.
Thank you guys.